Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. This is the AWS config wrap-up. So I hope you've learned a lot. We do like to keep things very hands-on and practical. It's the best way to learn AWS is by getting your hands dirty. So let's just review how AWS config works. We've got our assets sitting within within AWS. So it could be S3, it could be EC2 instances, etc., etc. We make a change. So let's say we make a change to a security group. That will then push out an event to AWS config, which will then log that event in our bucket. At the same time, that will push out a event to a Lambda function. This Lambda function can be a standard Lambda function that AWS provide for us, or it could be a custom rule that you write yourself, and it will evaluate whether or not that configuration change has broken any rules. And if it has broken a rule, what it will do is it will go and trigger an SNS notification, and it will send that to our user. So the great thing about AWS config is suddenly you've got visibility, suddenly you've got compliance, and suddenly you are audible. So it is a very, very powerful service, and a lot of the big Fortune 500 organizations definitely do use it. In terms of exam tips, remember what the different types of triggers are. So you can have a periodic trigger, or you can have configuration snapshot deliveries, which are filterable. So you can actually go in and filter what it is you're looking for. Perhaps it's if somebody logs in as a root user and starts changing things, something like that. And then in terms of the managed rules, there's about 40 right now at the time of recording. When they first launched this service this time last year, it was about 20. So they've doubled the number of rules in 12 months. And the rules are basic, but they are very fundamental as well. And we looked at the example of a security group being open to the world on port 22. So permissions needed for config. If you just remembered when we created our first config, it creates an IAM role, and this basically gives us read-only permissions to all our AWS resources, followed by write access to our S3 bucket, so it could go in and log it, and then also it gives us access to publish SNS notifications as well. And obviously, it created this for us. I would, as a habit, you should go in and have a look at policies. It's part of the shared responsibility model. Even though Amazon create this policy for you, you might just want to go in and have a look at it, make sure it works for your organization. In terms of restricting access, we need to restrict access to the AWS config rules, because somebody could just go in there and turn off a rule if they wanted to be malicious. Like they might turn off that rule around port 22. So what we want to do is make sure our users are authenticated and they have the appropriate permissions to gain access. Really, only admins need to set up and manage config rules and require full access, only really your security people. And you want to provide read-only permission for config for day-to-day use. Only your real top system administrators or your security people should have administrator access. I made that comment about somebody being able to turn it off. For that reason, you should use CloudTrail with config. It gives you much bigger insight into the resources. For example, when we changed that security group rule, we could see it was the root user who did it, and the person or the service that told us that it was the root user was CloudTrail. And then we should use CloudTrail to monitor config, because if somebody stopped the config recorder, that would be captured in CloudTrail. So always use CloudTrail in conjunction with config. And the very last thing I would do is config makes up a big part of the security specialty exam. So please do go ahead and read the FAQ. So that's it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.